While the national unemployment rate has hovered just around 4% for the past several months, the most recent figures for Gen Z in particular paint a much more darker picture for that younger cohort. Some say the emergence of AI is to blame, but my next guest argues it's also due to a misalignment of values between younger workers and hiring managers. Suzy Welch is CEO of Becoming New Media and co-author of a recent study that aimed to answer the question, is Gen Z unemployable? You wrote about this in the Wall Street Journal, Suzy. You teach these kids as well. And what, I guess, surprised you the most as somebody who interacts with Gen Z in terms of what they value, according to your research?
I wasn't surprised by the values because I teach these students and I know their values well because we test them with a tool called the Values Bridge, which was developed in my labs at NYU. And so their top values were not a surprise, those being self-care, which we call eudaimonia because we are trying to be less judgy about it. This is a Greek word meaning flourishing. Voice, which is authentic self-expression, and helping other people. These are their top values. When we did a second survey looking at what hiring managers are looking for, was not surprisingly, the value of achievement, learning, and the third one, work-centrism, which is a desire to work. And so I think what did surprise me is not the different values, but what surprised me was the magnitude of the disconnect, that only 2% of Gen Z has the top 3 values that hiring managers are looking for. Now, whether that's related or not to the hiring numbers, I don't know. I think that it does explain the frustration when Gen Z is often hired, and whether or not there are structural reasons they're not getting hired is another question.
How do we separate out Gen Z from other generations? In other words, like, isn't like stuff like self-care like just because they're young?
It could be
part of it, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
like, do we have the comparable sort of what values were? Okay,
so we do. We actually have because 70,000 people have taken this test, the Values Bridge. We have data on all the different generations, and we are now currently replicating it for other generations. But the older generations, my own generation, definitely values achievement more and affluence more, and part of this. Absolutely. Part of the reaction that I got from the Wall Street Journal piece was, oh, they're just young, they'll grow out of it. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure because I think they really deeply value self-care and taking care of themselves because they think that the bargain of postponing joy or postponing your happiness for somebody else, they think that bargain's over. So they saw their parents do that. They saw previous generations make a deal with their employers. I'll postpone my own happiness and fulfillment and pleasure, and eventually I'll be paid off for it. They're not so sure that's going to happen, especially with AI coming. So I'm not so. Some of them will have to grow out of it because the gravy train will be over, and mom and dad are going to say, okay, really now it's time for you to get on your own. And they may have to suppress some of their values, but we'll see. 98% is a lot of people to say, I don't want to.
Well, and what's interesting is maybe they're right.
Maybe they are.
Maybe they think that the bargain, that you work, the hustle culture that, I'm Gen Z, that was definitely part of my mentality is you work hard before you have kids, and then you still work hard even when you have kids. and then
you work hard after the kids grow up.
And then eventually maybe, you get to retire with your hard-earned,
Absolutely. I say to them all the time when I'm in class with them and I hear their values or when I see the results of the Values Bridge, I say, maybe they're right. It's not how I live my life, but values are choices. I mean, these are not virtues where we all agree virtues are good.
They can change over time.
They generally are pretty stable after age 25, but I would say what ends up changing is how much we live them or don't live them. But I think, look, maybe they're absolutely right that the bargain that we had before when I was coming up was a bad one. Time will tell.
So I guess the challenge for both these kids and employers is, of the 2% where the values do align, hiring managers are going to prioritize those people, but how do they find them?
Yeah.
And how do those people, does it sort of just naturally happen?
No, I think that this is, as one CEO said to me after the research came out, this is a cage match worth fighting. I mean, I think the companies that have hiring leverage, so the companies with good brand names or places where people want to work, like Google or Meta or Spotify or companies where people, I really want to work there, that's so cool. They have hiring leverage. They'll go find that 2% early. They'll know where to find them. They know how to interview for them, and they'll get picked off quite early. And I think that the really powerful hiring companies know how to find them and will. And I've gotten a lot of incoming from people in companies saying, well, is there a way to find these? And I was like, if you're asking now, it's a little late because some other companies have a real head start on it. Other companies, look, they're going to have to dig in and hire the people who are in the 98%, say, who have these different values. And they're going to have to make a decision as companies how much they accommodate them.
And what's your advice to those kids who are in the 98%?
Well, I have 4 of my own children, and I told them not to be in that because I was like, you lessen your job prospects by so much. I mean, like you're fighting with a lot of other people to get good jobs, but values are choices, as I said, and you can't talk people out of their choices, and you can't talk them out of their values. I think my advice to people is either you have to make a decision early on. Do I want to live my values and find a company that reflects them? Because it may not be my company for very long, because my career is going to be very non-lateral given the way the economy is going. Or do I say, well, that bargain might still hold and I'm going to take a bet on it? This is all about trade-offs, which I often tell my students, this is just being an adult, and now it's time for you to make adult trade-offs. It's, no one likes it, but you have time to make some decisions.
So to come back to the first question and the title of your piece, is Gen Z unemployable?
Yes. I mean, look, that's not my title, right? That's the title they put on it, for better or for worse. When I saw it, I was like, what? Is it unemployable? It can't, I guess my sort of existential answer is it can't be unemployable because we need them desperately. Right. Under what circumstances we hire them and they work, that's the open question to me. There are definitely aspects of them with their values that make them less employable to certain types of organizations, and look, we talked to a lot of hiring managers. It was a good study which we replicated, and they know what they want, and they're the ones who are going to have to make the decision about whether they compromise.